a select group of superior quality. We're looking at the elite guns of our August 15th, 16th, and 17th absolutely fabulous premier firearms auction. The best of the best. We've looked at percussion Colts. We looked at some great lever guns. And now we're going to talk about some fabulous cartridge Colts. You've heard the names. You've heard the collections, all represented here on this table, the top 1% of 1%, the really, really elite stuff. Again, nothing that we're going to examine is good. Nothing that we're going to examine is great. All absolutely elite. And for any amount of time and any amount of money, you can't duplicate it, right? And that's what we're saying here. For any amount of time and money, you can't duplicate what we're going to go through. Let's start front row on my left, the finest Orville Ainsworth inspected 7.5-inch Colt single action Cavalry. Ainsworth reigns supreme, right? Of the first 12,500, the first government contract for the single action army, Ainsworth inspected all 12,500. These are the lot 5, the lot 6 guns that you see, the prime lots for the 7th Cavalry issued guns. This is as early as it gets for Indian Wars. I mean, the guns that were there, right? We had the great Company K gun. We had the fabulous lot 5 gun. We can say without fear of contradiction that this specimen here, sitting to my left, is the absolute finest known example of an Ainsworth inspected Cavalry. This is the only one that I'm aware of that actually has brilliance to it. And when we've looked at a lot of great Cavalrys over the years, but we look at feathering on the front side, which we still see extremely proudly, which is, the second thing to go outside of the feathering on the grip strap, right? We think about picking up a gun. Where's that polish line gonna deteriorate? Right there where you grab it. And it's still there. It's extremely proud. When we talk about brilliance, it's the case hardening. It's how bright, how vivid, how original it still is. So, without fear of contradiction, this is the finest Ainsworth known, the absolute finest Ainsworth known. And it comes from a fabulous collection. Actually, Richard Ellis discovered this gun in 1983 in a cornfield in Iowa. Not in a cornfield, but from a family in Iowa, and it was sold to Ray Bentley. Ray Bentley sold the gun to the Pelton family collection. I'll give you like a little wink. When you see Pelton family collection, you're gonna see quality that is unmatched throughout the cell, whether it's Colts or Winchesters, just a little hint. Right behind it, we're gonna stick with the Pelton family collection, an icon, right? If we talk about the Colt single action army, the most iconic American firearm ever made, bread and butter, apple pie, baseball. This is America, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Frontier 6-shooter, right? So Kittredge and Company coined the term the Peacemaker, the model of 1873, the Peacemaker, right? And then we think of Kittredge when we think about the Colt 1877 Lightning and the Thunder, and also the Omnipotent in the 1870 and the 1878s, but that name didn't really stick. J.P. Moore and Sons of New York, which was Colt's largest distributor at the time, came up with the moniker Frontier 6, right, for the 4440 caliber. It's the ultimate companion piece to the Winchester, the 4440. So Colt Frontier 6, 4440, this is the acid etch panel. This is out of the Pelton family collection. How is this for a specimen of condition? We've sold one other example that is this good. It came out of Greg Lamb's collection. That was our first auction here in the fabulous Cathedral Fine Historic Arms collecting, our new world headquarters here in Bedford, Texas. But when we talk about elite here, we're talking about condition. Etch panel, about as good as you're gonna see. 4440, Pelton family collection, condition. One of the real collections that put Rock Island Auction Company on the map was the Gateway collection. And you talk about rarity. Here is a 45 caliber smoothbore, 45 long court smoothbore. It's one of 4 that was actually produced. One of 4 45 caliber long Colt smoothbore. This gun shipped directly to Emil Lenders, who is a very well-known Western artist and also a contemporary of Buffalo Bill, a friend of Buffalo Bill, shot in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Here you have a 45 caliber smoothbore, 45 caliber long Colt smoothbore, one of 4. And oh, by the way, you could shave in this thing. That's how bright and good it is. Let's talk about some embellished guns. We'll stay on this side of the table here. Just go right up front. We'll kind of work around in no order, but out of the Charlie Marks collection, a fabulous official police factory engraved gold inlaid. Gold is the ultimate embellishment for factory embellishment. Here we have a factory engraved official police out of the Charlie Marks collection. This gun shipped to Buenos Aires, and for whatever reason, of the very few, right, gold inlaid, we had one last time, a police positive. We had a gold inlaid news service last time. We had a world-class 5.5 inch blue case hardened gold inlaid single action about 5 years ago. That was a Buenos Aires gun. For whatever reason, there was a series of beautiful factory engraved gold inlaid guns that went down to Argentina, and this is part of that group with carved steer head ivories, factory letters to an absolute T. Right behind it, so we're checking boxes, right? Fort Worth, Texas ship, Wolf and Clark, factory engraved, full C coverage, one of 25. How's that? Now we're like checking boxes, right? So factory engraved, full C coverage. So A coverage, B coverage, C coverage being the most lavish. National match, again, one of only 25. It has a beautiful silver holster. And again, it's pedigree, rarity, condition. I think we're understanding here. I'm gonna jump across the table here from C coverage on this national match. Let's look at B coverage on a Colt single action. This is Wilbur Glahn, 7.5 inch blue case hardened carved ivories. That is the ultimate combination as far as I'm concerned. 7.5 inch barrel, blue case hardened, extraordinary carved ivory grips, condition, 98%. Glahn cut for Colt for 30 years, 1920 to 1950. What more could you ask for, right? In a first generation factory engraved single action and condition. Right in front of it, let's look at Helfricht. Let's look at Cuno Helfricht. Now Helfricht's super interesting because while Glahn, 30 years of career, Helfricht cut for 50 years. And the timeline that he straddles is, well, it's not only black powder to smokeless, but it's percussion to cartridge, right? So Glahn starts cutting in 1870 and concludes in 1920. So you'll see his work on a lot of different surfaces with Colt. That's cool. It really is. But he was an artist to the nth degree. We have not one, but two Helfricht deluxe guns. And when we study engravers, right, you have the engravers under them, hence their shop, and then you have the master engraver himself, which is his hand. And anytime you see, Helfricht deluxe, it's done in his hand. And so this is 1908. This is a factory engraved 5.5 inch. This is silver gold. This is out of the Dr. Nick Shannon collection. That's something you start checking boxes, like not just a factory engraved gun, not just carved steer heads. It's also silver, it's also gold, and it's also Helfricht deluxe. And like I have a really unique angle sitting here staring at the kind of the tops of the frames on these guns, what you might not stare at all the time, but you start seeing geometric patterns that you don't see like anywhere else. But kind of the telltale here is this cross hatching that you're going to see on the frame. Also this sunburst that you see on the loading gate on the recoil shield. But then you see like the deluxeness of this on the frame. And for condition, it's just taking that beautiful, beautiful aged, darkened, toned silver patina that you want to see. So regardless of finish, factory engraved single actions, right, they're extremely rare. We can quantify and qualify their rarity, right? Being conservative, they'll say 3,200 first generation factory engraved single actions were done in blue, nickel, and silver being one of the rarest finishes. Right underneath it, again, Helfricht Deluxe engraved, but this is a Bisley, also out of the Dr. Nick Shannon collection. And you'll see similarities here like we just discussed, that cross hatching on the frame, the sunburst on the loading gate on the recoil shield. Again, the subtleness of the deluxeness. I'll kind of flip it around here, but you'll see this geometric kind of starburst pattern as well on this side. And if we can get a good shot here, top of the grip strap right around the trigger, look at the work there. That's great stuff. The cylinder, same way. This thing like goes and goes and goes. And oh, by the way, it's also silver. Bisleys are really, really tough to find factory engraved examples in any condition. you're looking at one of 60. A lot of these went back after World War I. They weren't doing a ton of work during World War I, so you'll see a lot of quote unquote factory engraved Bisleys that went back. This is not what we have here. This is a factory engraved, oh, by the way, carved mother of pearl eagle shield grip, which letters to an absolute T. This one went to Arizona in 1909. This is 1908, so that's why they're pairs. Like these are mates. They might as well be. There's a reason that Dr. Nick put them together. Quality. To our immediate left here, we're gonna go to the Charlie Marks collection. And Charlie has a lot of guns. And these are one of the cornerstones of Charlie's collection, right? Charlie's got a lot of good guns. He's got a lot of great guns. He's got a lot of elite guns. For first generation Colt single action, right? We've already established the most iconic American firearm ever made. These are one of true one of ones in their configuration, right? You kind of look at Winchester collecting and Colt single action collecting the same, where we collect configuration rarities. And anytime you can like look in the camera and say without fear of contradiction, this is the only known pair in this configuration, we know we're talking about something really special. So, what do we have? Well, we have deluxe Cuno Helfricht again. Factory brown finish. So brown's actually rarer than silver and gold. Factory brown finish, gold inlaid, ivory grips, and one of the neatest things, so they're actually finished with Bisley trigger guards. Now, and again, I already mentioned the Captain J.R. Hageman gold inlay on the grip strap, which again, it letters to an absolute T. The Bisley trigger guards do not letter, but the point that I'm going to make is that one, the only person, these are 1901. I mean, Hageman started collecting in the 1890s as this stuff is still happening. We did a great vlog on Hageman. Who was Hageman? What did he do? His father owned the largest insurance company at the time. Speculation over loaning Colt money. What happened is Hageman had extreme clout and gravitas at Colt. He could get things done that nobody else could. And these was a pair of single actions he ordered for himself that are, again, as lavish and deluxe as anything gets. Like we looked at the similarities on the single action of the Bisley. Like I'll flip this around because I mean, here's one of the money shots on these guns. But if you look at this, it's almost like Nimsky when you see that rope that Nimsky was known for too, that rope or chain, that braid on the back. Look at that for Helfricht. And then I'll turn it here and you can see some of that cross hatching that we looked like on the frame of the Bisley, on the frame of the single action, but like the sheer like audacity of these guns. I mean, this is almost like a sampler for how lavish and deluxe they really are. As good as something gets, and it's a pair out of the Charlie Marks collection. As good as something gets, truly. And this is why we're comparing elite to elite here. So kind of go the opposite direction. We've seen C coverage, we saw B coverage, we've seen Helfricht Deluxe, Helfricht absolutely bespoke deluxe. And let's talk about these two in the center. We're gonna go back to Glahn again, cut for 30 years for Colt. These are A coverage guns. So these are out of the Pemberton collection. 2 auctions ago, we kind of had that pair, the mates, right? The nickel 7.5 inch gun, the blue 7.5 inch gun. These are mates for the A coverage guns. We really looked for good numbers on this. How many B guns? I mean, B's your standard, but how many C guns were done? How many A guns were done? What I'll tell you is I've seen more full C coverage guns than I have A coverage guns. And so here's his example of his nickel A coverage gun, but I think the real prize of it all, and this gun's elite in every sense of the word, no question about it, but this gun, I said it in the percussion, this is probably my favorite gun, at least of the single actions. Won't go down as the most expensive, but pound for pound, 99% A coverage, blue case hardened, and letters with letters wood grip. And there's just something so special about this gun. It has an unbelievable presence to it. For condition, this is like just about everything in Brigham Louise's collections, photographed beautifully in Colt engraving, but I always say we have to build a moat and a castle around the word mint, and we just use it so sparingly. It's so overused, and what we do, absolutely mint for what it is, as good as it gets. The last pair I want to touch on, and they have an interesting connection, and I'll start here. And they're a lot to take in. I'm going to gloss over a little bit of the history. I just want to talk about how great they are as art objects. Both out of the George Lewis collection. This is the finest pair of Colt new lines extant, and taking in just the case in and of itself is a piece of artwork. And we looked at some really neat cases, like we saw the bookcase, right? We saw the contoured 49, and this is a deluxe Colt case in and of itself. Typically associate this with like Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham, right? You see it on the very great panel scene single actions from the Centennial, and the Centennial's a great place to talk about the significance of these guns, because while these aren't from the pinwheel display, they have great 1876 Philadelphia Centennial history. Both of these are specimens in every sense of the word for condition. They're presented as the backstrap inscription reads, El Conte del Dio from J.R. Howley. Now, Howley was the president of the 1876 Philadelphia Centennial, and that's the connection we'll make here. El Conte was in charge of the Spanish delegation, the decorative arts department for the Spanish delegation at the 1876 Centennial. Why these were presented has been a little bit lost to time, history, and space, but what they are, again, is the finest example of the Colt new line extant, has stood the test of time. I think what we've seen here throughout these videos is this is an exceptional auction. There's no doubt about it. It's a decadent auction, if anything else. No more so represented here than one of the greatest groupings of factory engraved cartridge Colts that you're ever going to see. And just kind of rolling these around to understand their condition, their majesty, their beauty they're really worth seeing. I got cautioned very early on, right? Hey, be careful about what you wish for. Be careful about what you say when you say something's the best. George was at it for half a century with his great friend, Fred Sweeney. They know a thing or two. They've seen a thing or two. These are the best new lines known. Hands down, the best pair that exists, with fabulous history and an extraordinary case. Now, I said this fabulous pair, and I said these were a pair. If they're not a pair, they're certainly mates, or twisted in time, space, and history together. There's a reason they're here together. There's a reason they're in the same auction. There's a reason that Mr. Lewis put them together in his collection. So, again, fabulous case. I mean, look at the case. Moroccan leather. You see the piping. That's deluxe. This is another kind of like little nuanced trick in Colt collecting that you see so sparingly. You see this piping around this case, silk lined. A new police. I was always taught. I learned this is the Cop and Thug model, right? This is the Cop and Thug. Normally you see them blued, spur trigger with the Cop and Thug motif on the checkered rubber grips. Same model, but you see the acid etch panel here. But just like these new lines, this thing is absolutely mint. It's a best of for what it is, and the history between this Cop and Thug or New Police and these new lines are J.R. Howley, who presented these guns, state senator from Connecticut. Morgan Bulkley, who had this firearm presented to him in 1883, and oh, by the way, we have a primary account from a newspaper of this gun being presented after his second successful campaign as mayor of Connecticut. Now, he almost lived an odyssey for life, extremely successful. Mayor of Hartford, Connecticut, would go on to be a congressman, would run for Senate against Howley, and that's where these things are twisted together in time and fate. But one of the really cool things, maybe perhaps the neatest part of his success and his history, is that he happened to be president of a new baseball league at the time, the National League. He was the first president of the National League of Baseball, and would later be inducted into Cooperstown and the Baseball National Hall of Fame. But as a gun, a Cuno Helfricht Deluxe Engraved Cop and Thug, the best example of its kind from the George Lewis collection. Again, it's just like it's a whirlwind of greatness here, and this is one of those auctions that will be remembered and celebrated, long after the last gavel hammers on Sunday afternoon. It's a where were you when this happened? Where were you when the Cooperstown Cop and Thug came up? When Glahn's Engraved single action came up? And it's not just the finest new lines in existence. It's not just the Cartridge Colts. It's not just the Winchesters and Marlins, not just the percussion Colts. From sporting guns, U.S. military, German military, high art European, Simon Bolivar, it is just one of those sales. And that's really what it is. It's a time and a place. So history lives here, and we say that in more ways than one. Where will you be August 15th, 16th, and 17th? Hope to see you.